Republicans continue to innovate in the realm of bad faith because Donald Trump's increasing pressure campaign on Republicans to kill any attempt to address the issues at the southern border before the election appears to now be working, with Mitch McConnell reportedly poised to kill the very bipartisan legislation that he'd helped encourage in the Senate just to give Trump a leg up in the election against Biden. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert buttons before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, we have several clips to play. It's relevant in its own way to the video that we did earlier today about the standoff potentially between the state of Texas and the federal government, because supposedly Texas's actions are predicated by the crisis at the southern border. And President Biden introduced legislation for comprehensive immigration reform in his first few days in office, but Republicans wanted nothing to do with it because it's a wedge issue on which they can successfully campaign. And once it looked like actually a group of Senate Republicans and Senate Democrats were willing to actually work together in good faith to address this, that's now in jeopardy. So here's a couple of clips just to put it in perspective. This is Jared Moskowitz, a Democrat in Congress, the House of Representatives, talking about Republicans' refusal to actually solve the problem and just point fingers.
By the way, they don't want to solve this issue either. Again, don't listen to me. Just listen to the speaker, who was caught on a call the other day saying that we can't solve the border crisis until after the election. By the way, here's Congressman Troy Niels giving it all away. Giving it all away. Let's read this. Let me tell you, he's talking about immigration, let me tell you, I'm not willing to do a darn thing right now to help a Democrat, to help Joe Biden's approval rating. I will not help the Democrats try to improve this man's dismal approval ratings. I'm not going to do it. He's saying he's not going to do anything on the border. And he's from Texas, which needs help. He's not going to do anything because he doesn't want to give Joe Biden a win. You have members of this committee that have threatened to vacate the speaker again if they do anything on the border.
Now, that was just in the House, and that's been known. House Republicans have been openly transparent in the sense that they don't want to help do anything in a way that might benefit Biden politically before the election. Marjorie Taylor Greene and others publicly threatened to do to Mike Johnson, the current Republican Speaker of the House, what Matt Gaetz did to then Speaker Kevin McCarthy, right? And that was just in the House. But while all that was going on, a bipartisan group in the Senate toiled on to try to, come up with some sort of border policy and package with Ukraine foreign aid. That was the goal. Well, now Donald Trump's campaign seems to be hitting the Senate too. This is according to Punchbowl News. Mitch McConnell raises doubts about whether Senate Republicans should move ahead with border security/Ukraine aid deal. He told GOP senators, the politics of this have changed. The politics of this have changed, and noted Trump wants to run on immigration. We're in a quandary, McConnell said. McConnell read a quote from Trump criticizing the proposed border security immigration policy changes, called Trump the nominee, and said, "We don't want to do anything to undermine him." This is McConnell reading the mood of his conference in the GOP nationally. This may be the end of getting any significant Ukrainian funding through Congress. McConnell is vocal Ukrainian backer as there is on the Hill, but the opposition is growing inside the GOP, only going to be more so as Trump tightens his grip on the nomination, okay? And again, because Ukraine foreign aid was going to be packaged with border funding. It was going to address both problems. Here you have Tim Scott, who just endorsed Donald Trump for the presidency. He's a Republican senator from South Carolina. This is what he told Laura Ingraham.
Southern border.
Is this a border deal done in the Senate? McConnell,
Yeah,
we reporting from
yes.
Jake. Speaking of things that are over, reporting from Jake Sherman late today that McConnell is told a closed meeting of Senate Republicans, maybe you were there, that the politics of the border has flipped for Republicans and cast doubt on linking Ukraine and the border.
Well, we know two things. Number one, it's dead on arrival. Number two, the Democrats prefer the issue than any solution. Never forget that on any issue.
So you see how Tim Scott tries to flip it after saying, yes, it's dead on arrival, it's dead. He's trying to flip the issue, saying Democrats want the issue. Well, Democrats under President Biden were the ones to propose comprehensive border funding and immigration reform at the beginning of Biden's presidency, and it languished because Republicans don't want to take it up. Then we have Ted Cruz, Flying Ted, or Lying Ted, as Donald Trump once referred to him, also saying the same thing, that Republicans should not make a deal with Democrats on the border because, again, it's beneficial for them.
And Greg, I got to get into something that's happening in your home state of Texas, this standoff on the border. Governor Abbott is now going after the Biden administration for its failure to secure the border and saying that Texas is going to continue to take the border security issue into its own hands. They put up more of the razor wire. I mean, is this a come and take it Alamo moment here?
Absolutely.
Come and try to take it away?
Yes. Look, Joe Biden deliberately has caused this invasion of Texas and the United States. 9.6 million illegal immigrants. I'm proud of our governor. I'm proud of our legislature. We're defending Texas and defending this country. And Joe Biden is suing Texas, trying to stop us.
Mitch McConnell looks like he's saying this deal is not going too well for them.
It shouldn't go too well. It's a terrible deal. Look, there's a lot of the D.C. establishment that wants this deal, but it's designed not to solve the problem. I'm telling my colleagues, do not do any deal that fails to secure the border. We got to fix the problem or give up on it.
They have given up on it. The last piece of major border/immigration legislation here in the United States was like in the late 80s, early 90s. We haven't done anything with it for 30 years. It's been a bipartisan issue for decades, and it's been an issue under bipartisan administrations, Republican and Democrat. Donald Trump experienced issues with the border. As a matter of fact, it predicated the 2019 shutdown because he demanded more funding to deal with border surges. This is something that Trump experienced as well. Republicans engage in revisionist history and pretend that he had it under control, and they point to 2020 when in reality, COVID hit in 2020, and it basically locked the world down. It reduced border crossings to a creep. But the fact of the matter is that border funding, manpower, and policies are virtually identical from the Trump administration to the Biden administration, with just a couple of notable exceptions. President Biden isn't separating families, right, like the Trump administration did, and there was no evidence whatsoever that that functioned as a deterrent. When Donald Trump was separating families, there were still enormous spikes, at least relatively speaking, in undocumented crossings. So that didn't function as a deterrent. Title 42 was struck down by the courts. There's very little data to suggest that that was effective, because actually after President Biden stopped enforcing Title 42, we actually saw a decrease in undocumented, or at least the rate of undocumented crossings or illegal crossings, border contacts. So this is extremely complicated. And again, I'll say the rate of deportations is higher under Joe Biden than it ever was under Donald Trump, which is something that even the right-wing Cato Institute has defended Biden on, right? So as a matter of fact, you could easily make the argument from the left that Joe Biden might be too harsh on immigration. But again, Republicans are trying to spin it. There are also Republicans, unlike Ted Cruz, who are very upset with the bad faith coming from Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell. This is Mitt Romney, Senator of Utah. This is what he had to say.
It is a very important issue for Donald Trump, and the fact that he would communicate to Republican senators and congresspeople that he doesn't want us to solve the border problem because he wants to blame Biden for it is really appalling. But the reality is that we have a crisis at the border. The American people are suffering as a result of what's happening at the border, and someone running for president ought to try and get the problem solved, as opposed to saying, "Hey, save that problem. Don't solve it. Let me take credit for solving it later."
And he won't solve it later. Donald Trump had united government from, 2017 to January 2019, and he failed to pass comprehensive border reform and immigration, even Title 42 and things like that. That predates Trump. It's a pre-COVID. It was a long-standing statute that Trump appropriated for COVID. Trump didn't do squat on the border except be really, really cruel and get spurious results and shut down the government when he didn't get additional funding because of border surges, which happened under his watch. Again, this is truly a bipartisan issue. You can say that it's higher under Biden, sure, but don't pretend that it started with Biden, and there were highs under Trump as well, and Bush and Obama, et cetera, and so forth. Former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney, who again voted with Trump 93% of the time. She's very hawkish. She's very conservative. Even she is disgusted at the bad faith coming from the GOP.
If it's true that McConnell said, basically, we thought we had a deal, but now it looks like, Trump's going to be the nominee and he wants to run on this. That is so cynical and irresponsible and surprising, frankly. We all know how dangerous the situation is at the border. I think, as I said, the Biden administration, deserves real criticism for the fact that they haven't secured the border. But now for the Republican leader to be saying, well, we're not going to take any action because Trump doesn't want us to, that just, I think, confirms what everybody's frustrations are about politics today, and is just really, really cynical and sad that that's the position they're taking.
Very well said. And again, it's not like Republicans have done well on this issue other than to exploit it, right? Again, this is not something that they've been able to resolve when they've been in power ever. Jasmine Crockett, a freshman Democratic congresswoman whom I really, really appreciate. I think that if she's the future of the Democratic Party, we're in good hands. We need more people like her. She says, I want Senate Dems to remember how Senate Repubs like McConnell act. We lost Roe, affirmative action, student debt relief, and more losses are on the way because Senate Republicans held seats for Trump to appoint. Trump ain't the darn nominee yet, let alone the winner of the election, nor sworn in, and these soft, feeble, and mostly old men won't move unless the cult leader says so. But it's because we all know how people just love to blame Dems for every problem ever and then praise Republicans for what Dems have done. Record highs of the stock market debt while recovering, record low unemployment, record student debt forgiveness despite the court. But the border, listen, it takes a team. We need the House, Senate with aggressive energy, and a Dem president. Just vote blue. Agreed. That is precisely the energy. We need to keep and expand the Senate majority, not with people like Joe Manchin or even Kyrsten Sinema, who are better than Republicans, to be sure, in the sense that they vote with President Biden much more often than not. We need aggressive, ruthless Democrats who are willing to pass legislation and do filibuster carve-outs if need be. And we need to retake the House of Representatives, and we need to keep the president in office, or at least keep Democrats in control of the White House. Matthew Iglesias, who's kind of a centrist, he says, I don't see how you can make it clearer than this. Republicans are deliberately sowing chaos at the border because they think it will help Trump, and Ukraine is just going to be randomly sacrificed to Russia as a side effect. And then the last thing, this came from Dan Pfeiffer, again, a Pod Save America host. He's a former Obama appointee. He points this out, that polling, yes, blames Joe Biden more for the situation at the U.S.-Mexico border, but look, congressional Republicans in the eyes of Americans are not far behind. 35% of the American people approve of how congressional Republicans are handling this. So there's a margin for error here, folks. As he says, if a bipartisan deal is reached in the Senate and Mike Johnson follows through with his Trump-influence pledge to kill it, Democrats should hammer Republicans for putting politics over border policy. It's easy to imagine Biden using the State of the Union to make the case or responding to Trump on the debate stage. Republicans will only get away with it if we let them. Absolutely the case. Democrats need to be ruthless on this. They need to be firing on all cylinders. They and their surrogates, not for a single second, take nothing for granted. Biden proposed comprehensive legislation day one. It languished because of Republicans. There was a bipartisan deal in the Senate even now. Democrats have been working in good faith. Trump is trying to kill it, and he seems to finally be poisoning Senate Republicans enough to do it. House Republicans have had no interest in co-governing whatsoever. They are inferior as a governing party by far and cannot be trusted to run a lemonade stand, let alone the country. And we need to hammer this home. Let me know what you think in the comments.